I'm Nancy Ross with Tim Ballard. You recognize him, I'm sure, from the hit movie Sound of Freedom. Became an American hero and now an international hero for his incredible work rescuing children and bringing to light the horrors of child sex trafficking. A difficult subject, but really is super important right now, what's going on with the open borders. The U.S.-Mexico border in particular. In America, we've seen this mass immigration crisis around the world, and children are really caught in the crosshairs. And Tim has become an expert on that, dedicated his whole life to rescuing children. And now he has become a massive target. And he's here right now to present what you believe is bombshell evidence in a major case involving the alleged trafficker portrayed in the movie Sound of Freedom, who's suing Tim for defamation, saying she didn't traffic the children, and her attorneys are saying Tim's the trafficker.
What he was actually doing was assaulting her everywhere.
Cuenta el otro lado de una interminable historia.
Estuve esperando casi 10 años para este momento, para salir a hablar y decirles al mundo que soy inocente.
La ironía de todo eso es que Tim Ballard es el traficante.
And we want to show you the video, but first, Tim, first, thank you. And there are just the most heinous and horrible and vicious allegations against you right now. I've watched you endure a lot of this. We met just several months ago and really touched my heart because the more I dove into it, the more I wanted to find out the truth and the more I don't see the evidence that they're trying to present against you. Mm-hmm. Let's start. First, how are you? How are you doing?
I'm good. I mean, this year's been the most difficult of our lives, you know. Going up, I've been accused of everything. I haven't heard murder yet, but pretty much everything else.
Yeah.
And because Sound of Freedom was so big, of course, there's a big platform for critics to come on and start saying, "Oh, it's all false. It's a fraud," and so much of it comes down to the person in the film. Based on a true story. They use different names, but we have recognized that it's based on a person named Kelly Joanna Suarez Moya, who is in the middle of her court case right now. I've already testified in that court case in Colombia. But in the meantime, she's decided to sue me and Angel Studios for defamation, saying that she never trafficked anybody, that she was actually the victim. And these attorneys... So she has her own defense attorneys in Colombia, but the attorneys, Mortensen and Rasmussen, who are representing other plaintiffs, accusing me of various things, right? They went down to Colombia and picked her up as a client and got her to sue me for defamation. So there's a lot at stake here, because if Rasmussen and Mortensen went down and coached her into telling a different story, then what does that say about all the other cases?
Well, and let's make it clear to everyone, 4 claims so far against Tim and your wife, Catherine, have been dismissed. By different judges who have said, we see no evidence here. This is unfounded. Now, it doesn't mean Tim is off the hook completely at all. There are other cases, I believe 3.
And by the way, two of those have had to pay a lot of money to us to cover our legal fees. That's how convinced the judge was.
Yes, once Sound of Freedom became so popular, once you announced you might run for U.S. Senate, you suddenly became a target. And we're going to get into more of that, but I really want to show everybody this video. Again, never been seen before, seen in the courtroom, seen by the judge.
Right.
And now these alleged traffickers, their cases will be decided the end of this month.
Right.
And so you're sensing this is like a last-ditch effort by her team to try to smear you.
Correct.
And
sway public opinion.
Sway
to sway the judge. It's not a normal practice while a court case is going on to come out and present evidence, but they opened the door to it by going down to Colombia and basically calling the whole thing a fraud and saying that I was the trafficker, that Kelly Joanna is completely innocent. So I felt like I had a little choice but to respond so the public can see what was presented to the court.
And this is it right here. We're going to talk in more detail. This will be one of the last scenes we'll discuss.
This is the last scene we'll talk about where that's her, where she's talking about building a sex hotel, There's literally children that will come to the scene.
I saw them.
But we'll get to that when we get there. And we'll see what she says to us about what we are to do to them for money. And one more thing I want to say. We just won a dismissal last week. The Salt Lake Tribune reported that one more case was dismissed, thank goodness. And Rasmussen, the attorney who's representing her and the others, she says this bizarre comment that this is just one more Tim Ballard ruse of pretending that he has victory when he actually lost. We just sat back and just scratched our heads and thought, what did we lose? The case got dismissed. And then she goes into this interesting concept. She says, because her client that was suing me also has a foundation, and she's been very vocal, critical, saying things that are untrue about us for many years. And she was suing me because I sent an email to her saying, hey, want to talk? Like, it was a really nice email.
Right.
Like, you're saying things about us. Like, what's going on? Like, is this a jealousy thing because we're making money and you're not? Or what's going on, right? So she mocks me, Rasmussen, in the article by saying my client goes out without cameras, whereas Tim goes with cameras because he's trying to make himself a superhero and a Hollywood star and all this stuff. And it's interesting. I'll answer the question. Why do I bring cameras?
Why do you have video, Tim?
I have cameras for exactly the reason that we're here today, so that people like Rasmussen and others who are spinning a story can't get away with it. So I just thought it was so ironic and funny that, we bring cameras first and foremost because it's the evidence that you use in court.
Right.
Also to show the public that it's real. And by the way, we don't bring like our own videographers. Like we use DNA Films and other independent groups. We invite people in. If we're doing a fraud, the last thing I want is to bring some production company in to film it.
It's going to catch you
right?
being the
So I
trafficker.
thought it was so funny that she is mocking me for bringing cameras when in fact the cameras are the very thing that are going to shut her case and really do damage to her client. It's going to be interesting. All these people, these podcasts, especially in Utah, who want me to fall, right? It's going to be interesting to see if there's any integrity, journalistic integrity, because they've already reported that this is a fraud. When they see this evidence, it'll be interesting to see if they'll be honest and be like, oops, I didn't know she said this. I didn't know you had this footage.
Tim, if it's okay, bring us to the beginning before we get to the end here, and how you got to Colombia.
Yeah.
You were working for Homeland Security. We know in the movie, in Homeland Security, Catherine tells you, quit your job and go rescue those kids,
That's right.
Okay, so tell us what was happening in
So,
Colombia.
as you see in the movie, like my boss kind of had made up an excuse for how I could get down there, and so it was a training, consulting, but we turned it into a real case, right? And several cases actually. I mean, the movie could only get into so many things. So it's a great question because it also answers the question of if you framed Kelly Suarez, then we need to know, how did you meet her? Because they'd like to paint some kind of picture as if like I hunted her down and this innocent girl and said, here's a briefcase of money, go bring me some fake kids. That's the kind of spirit in which the critics are trying to say. Right. So let's tell the story. How did I meet her? And I'd like the audience, as you hear the story, ask yourself, what would you do if you were me? In every single one of the decisions I make.
Okay.
So the Colombian prosecutors, this is in 2014, they asked me to go to this beach called Playa Blanca. This beach is part of these distant islands off of Cartagena called Las Islas Barú. And they said, the reason we want you to go out there is because we have gotten continuous reports that children are being sold for sex out there. And there's not really a great law enforcement presence. And they said, just go to the beach, just sit on the beach and see if you're solicited, if anyone's selling children. That was it. So we're volunteer informants. We're signed up officially with the government of Colombia to work. So we're legal to work. Of course, I'm going to do that. If that's what they asked me to do, that sounds like a very important thing to do. So we get to the beach, and I'm not there for 20 or 30 minutes. And I'm approached by this person who calls himself Fuego.
And we'll see the video.
Yeah. In fact, Fuego says to me, hey, what you guys want some girls? I got girls. Now, this is important. You're going to see this in the clip. I don't go to him and say, hey, do you have 10, 12, 11-year-old girls? Right? We stay far away from anything that would look like entrapment. So I ask him, and you're going to see me when the clip begins, exactly what are you talking about? He says, I got girls. Like, exactly what kind of girls. What are you talking about?
Okay.
So let's roll that footage
Okay.
and see what he says.
All right.
Pero son experimentados. Sí, sí, sí. Sí tienen porque él lo quiere llegar.
Okay, so you and Fuego, you met for how long on the beach?
Oh, probably that conversation was probably 15, 20 minutes.
Okay.
He was trying to get me to actually go right then and there.
Go right then and there
Yeah.
to get some children.
He pointed on the island and he said, see those houses? It's like, I have a room there. You could do this right now.
Oh, my.
And, my assignment from the Colombians is to, do what they asked me to do, which is to gain intelligence.
And Fuego, by the way, he's one of the alleged traffickers being...
Yes, he was arrested. He's right here
Yeah.
sitting at the table.
And he'll be in court at the end
Yeah,
of this month
Correct. They're all in court together.
for their decision.
So I go back to the Colombian prosecution and I say, wow, your hunch or your intel seems to be correct. Here's the footage. And they watch it and their jaw dropped. Oh my gosh, this guy just comes up and offers you 12-year-old girls? And I say, yeah, here you go. Now what do you want me to do? Right? I mean, again, it's so funny. I'm being portrayed as if somehow I'm the dictator of Colombia. Like, I did this. I can make decisions, like charging decisions.
Or you're in collusion somehow with a corrupt government. I've heard that too.
Right,
That it's it's all a ruse.
Right. This is why we film everything.
Right.
And by the way, this is important to mention, the Department of Homeland Security in the U.S. Embassy, who I used to work for, I had to quit my job, as you saw in the film, to do this. But they still wanted to support. In fact, in the film, HSI, it shows HSI on the beach. They were there. They put out their own press release
Right.
saying the same thing I'm saying, that this woman was arrested for selling children.
As did ICE, as did Univision, as did many major media outlets. I mean, say what you will about the mainstream media. 60 Minutes covered it.
CBS News was on the ground. We actually invited CBS News on the ground. They were on the island too.
So you didn't stage this for CBS News.
Right. How could I possibly, why would I take that risk? I bring CBS News down, Scott Pelley reporting, they tell the story of what happened. And they're talking to the prosecutors too to corroborate the information, how this all happened and so forth.
Last weekend, police broke up a major sex trafficking ring in Colombia, which has become a destination for tourists looking for sex with boys and girls. The police had help from an American who went undercover to rescue the children, and Elaine Quijano met him.
Tim Ballard has one mission: to track down child traffickers. 4 months ago, Colombian authorities asked him to investigate a tip that children were being sold there as sex slaves.
Within a half hour, this individual walks up to me, starts asking me what I'm here for, what I want, and within minutes, he says, well, I've got kids as young as 11 years old.
Ballard, a former Homeland Security agent, after that first meeting, the Colombians asked him to put together a sting.
No men will be in here, only women.
Spent months planning, renting this house, rigging it with hidden cameras to document the crime, coordinating with Colombian authorities, and negotiating with the traffickers.
How they find these kids is they lure them in by pretending to have a modeling agency. They target them at 9 or 10 years old. And they were telling us that about by 11, they're ready for sex. They're ready to be sold.
What is that like, looking into that kind of person's eyes?
It's horrifying, and this is why. Because I've got a smile in the face of evil. This is the table where we're going to do the negotiation.
Less than 24 hours after the operatives landed, the suspected traffickers arrived on the island, and the final deal with the undercover team began. 54 boys and girls aged 11 to 18 were ushered in for what had been billed as a sex party. They were given candy and drinks and told to wait in this small room.
This little 11-year-old boy, I remember, he asked one of my operatives if they could give him some cocaine or something. He said, they usually give me something because I'm really scared.
By the time the deal was done, the alleged traffickers were set to make $25,000. That transaction was never completed. 25 Colombian special operatives stormed the party, arresting 5 suspects, 4 men and 1 former beauty queen, all charged with child trafficking. The victims, 29 of whom are under 18, were evacuated, given medical exams, and placed in a rehabilitation center where specialists are working to undo the damage.
Right before I got in the boat, we had to walk by this room where the kids were, and they put their hand up. And I touched their hand and see that there's liberation now.
Liberating one child at a time.
So the Colombians then asked me to pass the case off to one of their undercover operators because it's not my case, it's their case. So, and one of them was with me on the island anyway, right? So I basically say, hey, Fuego, this is my representative in Colombia. I love your idea of bringing kids to me and my buddies. We'll have a party or something, but I need you to work with him, right? Because it's his job to get the evidence, really. So he starts working the case, doing what they're doing, and they don't need to tell us anything. You know, we're just, again, we're like informants, we're assistants. He calls me one day and he says, hey, listen, a few weeks after we met Fuego, he said, Fuego wants to introduce you, you know, Brian, that's my name, my undercover name, wants to introduce you to his partners who are all together trafficking these kids.
Okay, so this is a ring, apparently.
Yeah,
This is,
that's what they tell me. It looks like a ring. He wants you to meet all the traffickers so that they can all kind of bring everybody together and we get rid of all of them. We don't know who's going to be in that place. Very risky. We're going to go into their territory. I knew there was guys with guns. I saw the guns on him, you know, that he had around his apartment. And we go in with hidden cameras because, again, I bring cameras everywhere I go. You know, really it's because I want to be hero and I want everyone to think I'm so great.
Right.
No, it's so I can answer people like Rasmussen and Mortensen who make up lies about me.
okay, so let's show this next clip.
Let's show the clip.
Hola, Tomás.
¿Cómo se llaman? Giovanna? Johanna. Es jefe.
Ella tiene una hermana de 12 años virgen. Quiere llevarla.
¿En serio?
Ellos están organizando. Ellos van a llevar una hermana de 12.
Dale.
Yo no he hablado.
Le dije $1,000.
O más. O más.
Quiero verla bien para pagar $1,000.
Tengo que hablar con ella.
No, el jefe gringo, sí, él va a pagar. Si tiene esto.
Quiero conocerla.
Yo la llamo.
Conocerla en persona. ¿Algo más? ¿O estamos bien?
¿Están listos todos?
Sí, porque este número así salga desde Colombia.
Sí, es internacional, no hay problema. No hay problema, yo me comunico con Edward todas las noches, hasta todo el momento.
Hablamos un poco.
Sí, con ustedes, conmigo.
Voy a estar cerca. Voy a estar cerca, igual no hay problema.
Muy bien.
¿Está bien?
Ok, me despido.
No, ese terreno está disponible ahí para eso.
Si nos quieres llevar a viajar, también estamos dispuestos.
¿Para qué?
No, pues queremos hacer una gran fiesta en Puerto Rico.
Sí, no.
So what you just saw there was I walk into the room, the two guys are undercover Colombian operators, and I walk in with at least one other of my operators, pretending to be the clients, and he introduces me to Kelly Joanna Suarez Moya.
Yes,
That's how I meet her.
We see her
Okay.
shake your
So
hand.
what,
And
at what point do I become the trafficker here? At what point do I become, you know, the guy framing this woman? I show up because a guy who asked me if I wanted 12-year-olds, you know, and if I did, to come to this place.
come to this apartment,
So-
and they're all there.
So who would do something different than this, right? If you're me, of course I'm going to go. So I show up there and she's there. And what you just heard was one of them says, I have a 12-year-old that I've already talked to. You know, they're talking about other kids too that they have. But she's like, and she actually says, you hear it from one of their own mouths. For $1,000, I got this 12-year-old that will be at least one of the people that will come to your party.
Was this the virgin they were talking about?
Yeah, she said that they've been prepping her. What they had told me was they'd like to recruit them around 9 years old, and they kind of desensitize them. I've had conversations with several of those traffickers. Edward seemed kind of be the ringleader to me. And he says about 9 years old is when you kind of start to groom them. and 11, 12 is when you start to sell them. So, she says, yeah, we're ready. This one's ready.
So that led up to the island rescue.
Well, one
which
more
we'll
thing
get to.
happened.
Yes.
So again, I'm not the dictator or king of Colombia. I am literally a servant trying to help this country who has a major trafficking problem. So we go back to the prosecutor. The prosecutor is the boss. Okay, Mrs. Prosecutor, this is what happened at the apartment. We met this woman. I didn't know who she was until that moment, who's Kelly Joanna Suarez Moya. And she offered us a 12-year-old and others. And the other traffickers were in the room saying, yeah, we got more. We're kind of pooling everyone together. So there you go. Now what would you like me to do? Like, again, I'm not running this thing. What would you like me to do? And they said, well, we'd like you, now that you kind of have some rapport with them, why don't you go and schedule, have a lunch with them where we can get the cameras set in a better position. You don't have to like go into their apartment wearing undercover camera watches and things. We can set cameras up so we get a clear vision and ask them more about what it is exactly they're offering.
Tell us now what is coming up in this next one where Kelly is very clear on camera here saying delicado.
Well, yeah, so let's, and we got two different, we set it up really well because now they're coming into our territory.
Right.
So you can see very clearly. And I'm following the instructions of the prosecutor. Ask them what these children, they've already established, these kids are, at least 2 times now on video, we have them talking about at least 12-year-olds. Eventually they're going to introduce an 11-year-old, okay? But they say, so that's the ages, we already know that, we've established. And they want me to get them to tell me what these kids are going to do for money. What are they going to sell them to us to do? So,
and that's important, by the way, to the case, because obviously you have to get them to admit this isn't, like you said, just a pool party.
Right,
or
because
something.
they're always, if you didn't film it, you know, again, back to the Rasmussen mocking of me bringing cameras.
Right.
They're going to make up whatever story they're going to say. Oh, it was just a pool party. It was just a quinceañera, whatever. They're going to say something. So this clip is actually very self-explanatory. I'm simply asking one of the traffickers, whose name's Samuel, who's also been charged. I say, what do these kids do? Will they do anything? Do any sex act? Like these are, you know, what goes on? So let's watch what happens.
¿Y qué tipo? ¿Qué hay límites en cuanto de lo que van a hacer las niñas?
Son niñas que no son muy, como deben saber, no tienen mucha experiencia.
These are girls that aren't super experienced because they're little girls.
Entonces, tratar de tener un poco.
So try to have a little bit of
delicadeza.
A little bit delicate with them.
Da igual, son niñas inocentes y que usted es el que le va a dar la experiencia.
So he just said these are innocent girls. So.
Okay, having seen that clip, let me ask you, what do you see there?
Well, it appears to me, again, I wasn't there, but it appears to me she's in the conversation, she's there, and she's relaxed and she's laughing after she says delicada or delicado. She's claimed, I've heard, that she was finishing someone's sentence, but she's in the conversation about how to treat
well, yeah, I mean,
these
exactly.
young victims.
We see Samuel answering my question about what the kids will do, and she finishes the sentence, say, just be delicate with them. Okay. Later, because in Discovery she got to see this video, she had to come up with something. I mean, her best case scenario is she's sitting with a bunch of guys selling 11 and 12-year-olds, which apparently she's cool with, but she's only there to sell herself. That's her best case fake story, right? Like, but we just saw what happened. Samuel's talking about little innocent children, and I asked them if we can have any kind of sex with them, and she says, yes, but just be delicate with them. It's very obvious. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how more self-evident kind of video evidence you would need.
And is this like the day or two before then, the big raid on the island? Or
I think this was like maybe a couple weeks.
A couple weeks before.
Yeah, because a lot of legal things have to happen, and they have to get warrants and different things.
Okay, so do we want to go to this
so
scene right here?
I'll ask you again, because Alan Mortensen, who's representing, again, a bunch of people suing me, went on one of the major networks in Colombia last week or 2 weeks ago and said, I'm the human trafficker here. So I'm asking you, the audience, I'm showing you this, I'm telling you the story, I'm showing you the video. Tell me, at what point am I the trafficker? At what point do I become the bad guy here? I'd love to know, right?
You were creating the demand, apparently, they're saying. This is one of the arguments, right? You
Yeah,
were
well,
there
that
to offer a lot of money and create the demand.
That
for
argument
children
gets
to come.
destroyed the minute that we have video footage of Fuego approaching me. Okay, what they like to pretend is that we walk around and just say, here's a bunch of cash, find me kids. Yeah. And so we can pretend to do an operation. That's not what happened. You saw it. I ask him what kind of women he's selling, and he tells me 12-year-olds. So that whole thing goes out the window.
So bring us to this day right here.
So this is the day that they're going to bring the kids. Okay? Now, we don't know how they're going to traffic these kids. We don't know who they are. They're not going to tell us who they are until they show up at the party, right? And they all have their different stories. And before I tell you what happens with that, I think I'll just mention this is so private with these kids. What happens afterwards? Like, they cut us off completely. We were working with a great aftercare center called Renacer, who is just livid at what is going on with Mortensen and Rasmussen coming down, trying to sway public opinion, maybe trying to sway the judge, by getting people to believe that Kelly's innocent. And they know all the stories because they took care of these kids for in some cases for years. And if any of the kids ever wanted to reach out to us, they had the right to do that. It's very rare that happens. It did happen in this case. One of the kids we rescued, who's now a young adult, who we can talk about, he is scared to death. We've had to move him at least 3 times around because Kelly and with the help of her attorneys revealed his name, which is against the law, right? Because they know he's a key witness, and you can pay someone a couple $100 to assassinate somebody. I mean, this kid's living in fear, and he's got a 3-year-old daughter who he adopted from a woman who had been raped and trafficked. Oh my. I mean, it's an amazing story.
You've stayed in touch with him.
Oh, he calls me his dad.
And one of their arguments is that he was not this 11-year-old or young Simba portrayed in Sound of Freedom. We may as well talk about that right now, that he was actually 16 or 17 at the time of this bust here.
Yeah.
So what do you say to that?
I say that, and we've always said from the beginning, before Sound of Freedom came out, this is based on a true story. I don't have the rights, by the way, to tell it. It's not a documentary. That's why the beginning of the movie says based on a true story.
And it's multiple stories, I believe, right?
Yeah, it's a conglomerate.
Woven into
it's a conglomerate.
The Sound of Freedom.
And I've been even before the film came out, like, did you really kill that guy at the end? No, I didn't. Did you actually go up that river by yourself? No, I had a couple of people with me, like, who went on into that camp. Like, we've been very, very open about what things have been dramatized and what's not been dramatized. So that a lot of things are dramatized. Okay, so yeah, seems... Simba may look like he's maybe 13, but when we rescued him, he was maybe 15 or 16. I don't know the exact ages, but
the fact is he was there.
That's why I asked someone, put yourself in my shoes, right? I don't tell them how they traffic. I don't know their methods yet. We're going to learn their methods.
Right.
But based on the narrative and the true story that's happening here, we have no choice. We're not going to say, cut the party just in case someone comes that shouldn't come, or you know what I mean? Yes. Like a lot of times they'll bring adults to the parties. If you're selling children for sex, I've never seen someone who's doing that's not also selling adults. So in almost every operation I've been in where kids are rescued, there are adults who make themselves available.
And even if prostitution is legal, you were saying, it is against the law to traffic anybody, traffic an adult or a child.
Adults can be trafficked too.
Anyone.
Yeah, adults can be trafficked as well.
I mean, these are serious allegations that are 15 to 20, 30 years in prison. Is that what they're looking at?
Yeah. All we could do is go off what they were telling us is they had a modeling agency, and that's it. That's what they told us, and it's actually in the clip. They have a modeling agency, and that's how they recruit these kids, and then they sell them.
Okay.
So that's the only way they told us how they do it. And in fact, when you see in the clip on the island scene, they it was their idea. In the movie, they made it look like it was my idea. It was actually their idea. Why don't we keep doing these parties? Like, this was like a product testing party. What they wanted to do was build the sex hotel. And you're going to see all of them, including Kelly, talking about how best to do that, where to build the hotel, how to do it. And that's all caught on camera that we're going to show you here.
Okay. We'll play that, and we'll have the full clip available too if people want to watch all 25, 30
it's 25 minutes of this conversation.
Before we get into some of the really difficult details about this conversation, and this entire conversation I know is not easy, yet tell us how you get in that mindset. And you've been doing this has been your life's work for 20 years or more. Your wife, Catherine, has set up a separate agency adopting these children. You have 2 adopted children of your own from these missions from Haiti. Now, let's take a quick look at the police raid at the orphanage in Haiti.
Everyone just get down. Get down. Get down. Get down. Put your head down.
You don't even know how prevalent this is. Little kids this age being forced into sexual exploitation. Like, you have no concept of how real and how huge it is. How huge it is. There's thousands of people who do this, and they would love to get their hands on little kids like this. And they're this age, and they're this age. So this is, and I fear that people won't understand.
Because she doesn't look like a bad guy.
What a huge problem is. They never look like bad guys. I've arrested dozens of bad guys. None of them look like bad guys. They look like you, they look like me, but at the end of the day, you can't traffic children.
No.
At the end of the day, there's laws put in place to protect kids, and one of those laws, surprise, surprise, is you can't sell them. Like, you can't sell human beings and put a price tag on them. And that's what these 2 people did. Both of them did it. Both of them knew they were doing it. They didn't know who we were. They knew us for an hour. They had no idea who we were. If you guys were traffickers, you'd come in just like this.
Tell us how you and how some of the operatives with you even prepare for something like this.
And this next scene portrays this, right? This is the point where you see these are real children who people are selling for sex. And I mean, it is the most heartbreaking thing. There's not one of my operators who doesn't have, like, we have to see therapists and do all sorts of things to keep ourselves sane, We have children of our own. We see our own children's faces in the faces of these children when we see them. But in this next scene, you're going to see us. They're going to present some of the kids. They bring a couple of them out, and it is so hard.
Tim, what's so hard for people to believe, and especially those who don't want to hear it, they don't know perhaps it's the fastest growing criminal enterprise in the world, and that America is the top demand for child sex, for child rape videos, which I could never. I used to think it was some psychopath in a basement somewhere, just an anomaly, someone who could do this.
No.
But to think that they're, like you said, and it's gone up.
Way up.
Thousands of percentages, and just the trafficking over the border is up under this current administration to over 2,000%.
And that's one of the reasons we need to be having this conversation, right? Because like Red Pilled America and whoever else, what they're doing, and probably not intentionally, I hope, they're undermining the cause by saying it's not real. These aren't real. This is staged. Rasmussen and Mortensen continue to talk about it's all staged so Tim can make himself a hero. Like, look at these kids. There's a kid who's running for his life right now because of what they're saying. Okay, are you really helping the cause? It's funny, they call me a trafficker. Who's the accomplice here? If this woman actually said the things that we just saw that she said, so we know she said them, and you'll see something else she's going to say even worse in a minute, and you're defending that, who's the accomplice to the traffickers? Me, or is it them? And if you're irresponsible in your media reporting, about what we're doing, and to try to sensationalize some story, about how the Sound of Freedom is this great fraud. Who are you helping? Who are you helping? You're not helping the guys saving the kids. You're helping the traffickers.
And Tim, like you said, all of this distracts from
Right.
What is at the heart of this, and the children who are crying out for help.
Think of these kids. You're going to see them on the
right now.
If you're watching this screen, you'll see them because this is looping. They come out. These are real children. Okay, and so when you undermine what we're doing, and you call Kelly innocent and a victim, and when you reveal details of operations, or when you make accusations against a person or people who are doing this work, make no mistake, you are helping. The traffickers love this. They love these lawsuits. You don't think they love these lawsuits? They love it. It is slowing down the work, and I'm just so. That's why this case is so important. I mean, Mortensen and Rasmussen. I mean, everything on the line right here. If she's convicted, what's that going to say about the other cases?
Yes.
That they spun some crazy story. They did it here, so why didn't they do it everywhere else?
When she filed this lawsuit against you, I saw you the next morning when this story broke.
Right.
I was interviewing Tim at CPAC. That was, I think, the first time we had met.
Yeah.
You just came in, you were just shell-shocked.
Yeah.
And I happened to check the news the night before to see if there was anything new on Sound of Freedom. Tim Ballard, Eduardo, the producer, was coming on with us. And were you... And I said, the trafficker portrayed in the movie is suing you for defamation. What did you think?
It's heartbreaking because I know what that means. The work's going to slow down. I mean, we've come out. We had to shut down Catherine's agency. There's 26 kids that were about to be adopted that will never be adopted because of these lawsuits, and that's on them forever. Because you know how much? I mean, it's costing millions and millions of dollars. We have the best attorneys. They're worth their money. So it slows the work down. It discredits the work, right? By pretending that what you're saying is it's not really happening. So what it would do is it would motivate eventually policies to be, well, it's not really happening. Look, you have to make it up.
And after we see this clip, I want to talk about what happened after this. Probably before all these lawsuits hit, you were in the middle of another documentary. You didn't mean to fall into this, but you got a call from Mel Gibson about a tip in Ukraine. And I want to talk about the Child Trap documentary, or whatever it will be named, and how that relates to this global war against children, against our culture, against our families, and now has even bled or has been part of our politics for some time. But let's watch
Let's go this clip. What we're going to do is we'll put a separate link. It's 25 minutes, and so we'll just talk about pieces, but we'll put the whole thing so you can watch it. We'll have subtitles up. But let's start with the 11-year-old boy they introduce. Okay, and you will see very clearly, and this is important as an operator. I know I'm experienced enough to know how to do this. I don't want anyone to be able to get off the hook. So I say, Edward, Samuel, Joanna, Kelly, look at me. All three of you, look at me. What will this 11-year-old boy do? And I'm sorry, this is triggering, and it's raw, and it's horrifying. And you'll hear them talk about what they can do. Is anal okay, and so forth. And Kelly responds, you'll see her response. She says, you can do anything. And then she uses the same word, or basically the same word she used at the lunch 2 weeks before, and said, con delicatencia, or whatever.
Delicado. Or
just be delicate. Let's watch the scene, and you decide for yourself if she's selling kids or not. And remember, I specifically talked about the 11-year-old boy that they were selling. I wanted to bring up the youngest one to see what they would say. What do you mean? What is your intention with this 11-year-old? So I specifically bring him up. I specifically get all their attention. I name all of them, so they all have to answer me. So one can't say, I didn't answer. I was I just watched. And Kelly answered todo. She says everything, and then she says, just be delicate. And here you go.
Yeah.
Joanna, mirada. Joanna.
You gotta pop it up.
¿Qué traes? Y Samuel van a hacer, ellos hacen, ¿qué hacen? ¿Qué hacen? Porque hemos hecho esto antes en Tailandia, en otros lugares.
Sí, para no tener inconvenientes.
Y de repente no hacen algo como... hay actos diferentes.
La tuya tan clara. Anal.
So I told him when we were in Thailand before, and some of the kids didn't do everything you wanted them to do, so we gotta know.
Yeah, if some just to look at.
Anal. Lo van a dar. Ya. Que hay dos niñas que les vino el periodo. Ahora en la cuestión, pero anal lo dan.
Anal's okay?
So anal está bien.
Sí, anal. Sí, está bien.
But no vaginal.
Pero vaginal también.
Sí, vaginal también. Todo. Todo para que sepan. Ya. Ya.
Para mí.
Sí, para que.
Boys and girls.
Yeah. Para mí.
Pero una pregunta. Para que todos estemos bien claros. Estos regalitos, ellos para tener sexo. Cada una de ellas.
Sí, pero
incluyendo el niño de 11 años.
Sí, el niño también. Pero que lo traten suave, con... Usted sabe, porque son unos niños, primera vez, suavecito.
Ya
me entiende. Ese trabajo de usted.
Ya,
suavecito.
Para mí.
Y estos cuestan más, ¿no? Edward, estos cuestan más.
It's the first time I saw it was just last night, because again, this was in the court, has been admitted as evidence, has not been released to the public. I saw the clip before that was released where she says delicado, and it just, it just turns your stomach thinking that someone can be talking about children. Just go ahead and rape them, but just be delicate.
Be gentle with it. It was the first time in my 20 years that I'd ever seen someone admit, it's like they're admitting, I know what I'm doing is really bad.
Yeah, and then
do it. And
laughing
then
about
laughs
it, like
about
this
it.
evil smirk. But to watch them here, like, with beer and pizza, and then they're just ordering children for dessert or something.
Yeah,
it's
that's
just,
right.
That's
how they're talking about it.
It's so abhorrent. I mean, but this is apparently what's going on and what has been a massive problem in Colombia and countries around the world, and American tourists are demanding this. And there is obviously a big market for it in America.
So can I ask you a question, and I'm asking the audience at the same time? Was Kelly Joanna Suarez Moya selling children or not? And the people that are being sold for sex, by the way, are in the other room.
Just steps away.
Yeah, she's not. She's sitting with the traffickers on 3 different occasions we have videotaped. And she's offering, she's instructing to be delicate. She's saying it's okay to do everything with this 11-year-old boy, just be delicate with all of them. Now, when people watch the full clip, other things that are going to come out that I want you to pay attention to are, we asked them how many they brought. They said 54. We asked them what kind of sex. They said, and I'm sorry, I have to be raw. They said vaginal, anal, oral, whatever you want. And then...
And can I just say, if they're saying this so casually and flippantly, this has happened before, or they appear to have been in this situation before and know these kids, or know these.
To me, it's impossible
victims.
to think they haven't been there before. Since Fuego approached me that day on the beach, this is his gang, and he says, I could take you right now to a 12-year-old. Right now. And I said, no, we got to go, but let's stay in touch, right? So this is something they offer, not something we're even asking for, right?
So were you shocked at all when you heard this conversation and how quickly they came to the table?
Oh, it's so shocking because it's just a business. Like you said, it's like selling pizza or selling a computer or whatever. And what I want people to pay attention to also, beyond, after they give you the instructions on how you can have sex with everybody, you're going to hear them talk about how we're bringing cocaine. It'll be here in about 30 minutes. And then they start getting into this sex hotel. And you'll watch the whole thing. And Kelly participates in the conversation. She gives her opinions about how to make this the best way. We're going to build this sex hotel. And you'll hear me at one point say, well, how are you going to do this? The cops are going to catch us. And they said, no, we're going to use the modeling agency as the front. Like this is just a modeling agency. And people won't know it is,
And that's all documented.
You're going to watch it. Yeah. I invite you all, I beg you all to watch the whole 25-minute conversation that we had. and you know, and
So when you walked away from this case, did you think it was a slam dunk?
oh, absolutely, it was.
And it's taken 10 years to prosecute. This video has not been out for 10 years.
Yeah.
Why?
The judicial system in Colombia, just in a lot of countries, moves very, very slowly. There's certain things I don't want to say because I don't want to insult Colombia. But there were some incorrect things when the trial began that had nothing to do with the prosecution doing something wrong. But some things where they had to get a new judge that they knew was, that they felt was, from the government that was honest and going to. This, you gotta understand, this is the first case like this that they had tried.
Wow.
So everybody, they had never seen such a big trafficking ring before, and that's the case in most of the countries that I've worked in the last 20 years. In most of the countries, a legitimate child trafficking case, the one that we did with them, was their first, because it's over the last 20 years. Like when I started 20 years ago, no one knew what it was. No one was talking about trafficking, right? So it's been progressive, and then COVID have shut down everything for a while. And it justice moves slowly, unfortunately. What happens is there was enough evidence, and there's a judge who makes these decisions. Again, I don't make the charging decisions. Right. If Kelly was charged, it was because the prosecutor said, wow, that's overwhelming evidence, we have to charge her. I agreed with it.
Yes.
Because I saw what you just saw.
Right.
But I'm not, again, it's so funny how Tim Ballard does these. You think I don't own these countries,
right?
I'm literally serving them. I'm just doing what they want. I
And
know how to do it.
You weren't getting paid by the Colombian government.
Nothing.
And you weren't getting paid by any outside sources.
No, not at all.
Right.
And never did I dream that this would become a movie. Yeah. Right? They like to pretend that this is all just a setup for. I had to film this. The whole point of this is I'm going to come back to the prosecutor and say, here's what happened. Watch for yourself. Right? I mean, and thank goodness we have it. So we can get around these lies. Again, I just go back to that. Like Mortensen goes down and says, ironically, Tim Ballard is the trafficker. And
what evidence would she?
Well, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Here's the whole story. At what point do I become the trafficker here? I'd love to know. I've told you the whole story. Here's how it happened. What would any of you have done differently than what we did? We followed the rules, the procedures. We were solicited. We follow up. That's what you do. That's the job of law enforcement. That's how children get rescued. And when you discredit this case and lie and change the story and try to call the good guys the bad guys, you are doing a huge favor for the traffickers. They love you for doing that.
And by the way, it took them 10 years to figure out you were the trafficker, because they could have said that immediately and gotten you fired and ruined your career 10 years ago.
Right. Yeah. Well, of course, everybody on the case and the prosecution, they all know the truth. They're appalled at all this. They just can't even believe.
Your worst critics, perhaps, are saying you haven't rescued children and no traffickers have been busted.
I don't know what to do but to laugh. It's an easy target, and the reason is because we protect the privacy of these children. We're not going to show you their faces. We're not going to tell you their names. We're not even going to tell you their individual stories. Those are moments for court, for an interview, law enforcement interview. So it's an easy target to say there's no kids. We have documented every kid that's rescued. We document everything the government gives us about them. I've seen them. You're watching them right here. I mean, I know who they are. 2 of them live with me because I rescued the 2 kids from traffickers who were selling them, and I adopted them. So there's at least 2 that, but it's actually in the thousands. It's in the thousands that the organizations that I have led or operations I've led to the rescue of women and children. I mean, again, this is why we have to take video cameras everywhere we go. And even with the video cameras, they're still going to say, you've never rescued kids. It's just
unbelievable.
How come every single country keeps calling us, come back, let's do it again? What, it's just fun to pretend that something's happening? I mean, it's almost too silly to answer, but you had to ask it because it's being, you know,
Right.
it's out there.
Well, you are incredibly strong to be standing and still fighting. And that's what I want to talk about, if we can, briefly, what is next and what came. This would have been 2022,
2022, yeah.
when you got a call or a text or a
call.
something came in from Mel Gibson. Tell us.
Yeah, I just got a random call from Mel Gibson, and he hates child trafficking as much or more than anyone else, you know, and you know, we knew each other from different reasons, but we always talked about it. He really cares deeply about this cause, and when the war broke out in Ukraine, he called me like the next day, and he said, "Hey, there's several orphanages out there that I'm familiar with or sponsor. Is there any way you and your team could go get them out?" You know, and that was 24 hours after my wife had told me the exact same thing, because her agency was in the process of adopting, I think, 7 Ukrainian kids, like months away.
Before the war broke out.
So Catherine's like, "You got to go to Ukraine and find those 7 kids."
You personally.
Yeah, and I said, "You're kidding me. Like, Catherine, there's bombs dropping."
Right.
She's like, "Yeah, but these kids could get hurt or whatever." You know, it was, and she was like biting her lip and crying as she was asking me to do this. I mean, she knows the danger. She just asked me to go put myself in, but that's her passion for these kids.
Right.
You know, and so we ended up going out there. We partnered with Aerial Recovery because their expertise is working in hot zones, war zones. Right. You know, they go in after natural disasters, and they wanted to partner with us because we have the human trafficking part. Because human trafficking always follows the catastrophe.
Right.
It's harvest time for human traffickers. Wars, big earthquakes. I mean, most of the kids we rescued in Haiti became vulnerable for trafficking because of the big earthquake in 2010. That's the story of my 2 kids. There's a whole documentary on that on Amazon.
Operation Tucson.
Yeah,
Highly recommend it.
Yeah, go watch that story. So we teamed up. Thousands were brought out. It was a very successful operation. Thousands were brought out. We filmed the whole thing.
I've seen it. It's a 4-part.
It's a 4-part
documentary right now.
Yeah, it's going to actually come out first, I think, as a theatrical release documentary. But it plays like a movie.
And can I say it? I think it's the 4th episode where you FaceTime Mel Gibson.
Yeah.
And what do you tell him?
Well, he's interested. He's following this case. I mean, he asked me to go look into it, so he's following it, and he wants to say hi to the cops who are helping, and yeah.
And we won't give away the ending, but it's yes. It's
now it got rumored and everything that he's the producer, and I'm going to make it clear he's not. And he responded, no, I'm just trying to. He's just trying to help.
Right.
He's not producing it or directing it or anything like that.
But what was fascinating is you said it uncovered what you believe is the biggest, perhaps one of the biggest child trafficking operations on the planet.
Yeah, it's the biggest one I've ever been part of. I think the story is more compelling than the Sound of Freedom story. Because while we were in Ukraine, we came across a Dutch pedophile group. They're a political action group.
Right.
That were trying to get the laws changed in Holland.
Part of NAMBLA, right?
Connected to NAMBLA. Same doctrine, which is basically they're pedophiles, and they think that adults should be able to have sex with kids.
And why, again, this is, you know, it's difficult to talk about just matter-of-factly, but why do they think it's okay to have sex with kids? Why is that?
Because they think that kids. He explains it. The bad guy Nelson Matman, who we end up tracking down. He's hiding out in Mexico. I don't want to give everything away, right? But
right.
I'll give pieces. He's hiding out in Mexico when we find him. Well, we find him because he's actually inquiring about how to get some of these vulnerable kids from Ukraine to him. Mm-hmm. And so that's how we kind of get in there and go undercover. But he says in an interview in the documentary, he said, "Why shouldn't kids have sex? If a kid can say he wants to go to the park, or a kid says he wants ice cream and likes strawberry ice cream, why can't a kid also enjoy sex?"
So this group you find is connected to NAMBLA, the North American Man-Boy Love Association, this push for the acceptance of pedophilia. We've seen it creep into now the politics in America, where apparently the vice presidential pick, Tim Walz, is being accused of wanting to somehow legalize pedophilia.
Yeah, there's a bill. I saw it. I'm not an expert on it yet, but what it looks like is he has made or is trying to make pedophiles a protected class. You know, kind of like the Civil Rights Act.
Right.
This include pedophiles in it as well.
That your sexual orientation could be you prefer children.
And this is the pedophile agenda. This is what they've been pushing for. They've been trying to change the name pedophile to minor attracted persons. They want LGBTQ plus MAP.
MAP, minor attracted persons.
Yes.
Doesn't sound as bad as pedophiles.
Because what they're turning this into is it's not bad. They're going to try to change this whole thing. And that's where we're headed. Other republics, the same thing happened to the Roman Republic. You know, the ancient Rome, ancient Greece.
Let's talk about
that. Was the end of their. That was the end of their existence when they started doing that. They started legalizing pedophilia, and we're definitely heading in that direction. And I learned that when you see the documentary.
Yes.
Either it's called Child Trap or Hidden War. We don't know which yet, but you'll see this story. You know, it ends with this huge takedown of this organization, but then you learn, oh my goodness, like these leftist kind of agendas, and I'm not saying liberals. This is not political to me at all. And I hate it because Trump put so much emphasis on human trafficking, I worked closely with him.
Yes.
And so all of a sudden people discount me. Oh, he works with Trump. I would say the same thing and run just as fast to President Biden if he called me. But they're not calling me.
He hasn't called you?
No.
They haven't employed you to fight any of these
No,
missions?
I've had no interaction at all with this administration.
But you're saying put children over politics.
Put children over politics. It's
Otherwise,
not about
I mean, the fabric, the very fabric, not only of our families, but our country, our society is at stake when we look at ancient Greece and Rome.
And that's why it's important that we do what we do. And that's what part of this interview is about is
no one else is doing what you're doing. I mean, no one else.
There's a lot of organizations that do a lot of good things. There's very few that in their intervention that actually go in undercover, go to the darkest corners of the earth, like we just did last week in Mexico.
Yes.
And like you're seeing us do here, and to discredit it, you're only helping the human traffickers and the child traffickers. So I'm so grateful we filmed all this. Yeah. I'm so grateful we're able to show it to people, so they know the truth about what happened with Joanna Kelly Suarez Moya and the people who are supporting her.
And you've been the pioneer. And that's led to many policy changes. And we need more policy changes, more tougher laws, and also laws that favor victims, right? So they can restart their lives. But I know there's a lot of work being done on that. But an honor to chat with you again. And I really appreciate you sharing this. And I did have the privilege of going on that mission in Puerto Vallarta, and much more to share on that.
You were there.
Not that I could see, and I still haven't slept since then. Again, back to the lives that are at stake here, but a real blessing. Well, God bless you and your family, and we'll be very eager to see how this is resolved here in the next few weeks.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.